It is Monday, January the 18th, 2021, and this is the iPhoneography Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Greg McMillan, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and good friend, Dave Podner. Hi, Dave.
Greg, how's it going today?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. We had our little weather discussion earlier, so we got that out of the way, and of course it's cold and probably going to get some snow, but that's enough of that.
Yeah,
I don't even want to think about more snow. So this week we are going to talk about some stuff that was. I put a post on the Artful IPhoneography community on MeWe, just asking folks what they'd like to hear on the podcast. And a couple of ideas came up and that we were going to talk about tonight. And I'm going to talk about photo contests and, different things about that. But before we get to that, the other thing that was mentioned was, what we kind of do to help improve our photography or to help hone our craft. And Dave's been doing some stuff recently that's been looking pretty good. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Dave, and we'll talk, have a little discussion about how you've been improving your photography.
Sure.
So take it away.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah. Honestly, and this is something I was actually thinking of even before we started to discuss the topic. And it kind of goes into not only improvement, but finding your own voice in photography. Is that when people start off, let's say early on, let's say you're going from I'm taking a picture to take a picture with, again, nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine to I actually want to tell a story, or I want to get a feeling, or I want to portray, get more than just, hey, look what happened that went on. A lot of that for me is seeing other people's photos. So it always helps if you're, let's say, following people on Instagram, which whether people's thoughts on Instagram one way or the other, it still is the largest and easiest way to see a swath of photography out there. And
that definitely gets the most eyeballs for sure.
Exactly. And also, if there's someone on there who, let's say, they start, even if you may agree with someone or not agree with someone, but if they're posting something, you're like, I don't really want to see that there, or I want to, you don't have to follow people.
No, that's right.
Just because it's like, oh, I like that person, but I don't like what they're posting there. But if you want to follow them on Twitter, do that. But if you want to use, let's say, or if you want to start, saying, okay, this is going to be photography or a visual aspect, do that and say, okay, well, what do I like? Or you start seeing people post things and you're like, I kind of like what happened there. Or, okay, I can see what they're trying to get there, but it's not necessarily for me. So just getting a feeling for what's out there and seeing, getting a feel for what you like and how you would want to tell a story. Because there's tons out there in terms of, let's say you want to say, well, I took an image and I know what I saw in my mind's eye, but I saw what came out of the phone. Now, admittedly, newer phones have like a 12 versus a 10 or a 7. It may get closer to reality than an older phone, but it still may not match what you saw. Kind of like the difference between a straight photography and someone actually painting a picture, where someone painting the picture could go ultra realistic, but they could do trying to get a feeling about it. So I know when I started, when I started taking photos, a lot of it was literally, I see something that's happening. I like to share that with people and just take a picture and snap it, which there's still times I want to do that. Something's going on, or, here's a cute picture, here's this happening or that happening. But there are times where it's like, okay, I want to, well, recently I went on a run and just noticed it was kind of by the river down here, and just happened to notice the reflection really hit really nice the river was really smooth, so the reflection on the other side was I thought it just popped. So when I got home, but I took my picture just to make sure I got the setup okay, because in my mind that's the one thing you really can't fix in post, to actually get the layout of the image. There's some you can do on it, but that's the one thing it's the most hard to actually fix, saying, oh, I didn't want that there, I wanted this angle. You can fix it, but it's still not as good. But, in terms of lighting or colors, you can do a lot with that afterwards. So in the past, when I took pictures, it was more of, oh, I'm going to boost this and do that. Or a lot of times I fell into, I'll call it the Samsung TV look. If you ever look at TVs, and Samsung they're better, but in the past they were significantly more egregious for stepping over the line. Was their TVs would look amazing in the store because they had the store's incredibly bright lit, all these TVs, and they stuck out because they over boosted the colors. And they used to do the same thing with their phone screens too. Over boosted. The reds were bright red, and it caught your eye because you were looking at it for a half a second in a store surrounded by all these other screens. But when you get home and you tend to look at things like that, you're going, ooh, that's kind of overblown. And a lot of times when I was starting to, edit my photos a little more seriously and try to get a feel for it, I would just overboost it. I look back on that now, I'm like, oh, that's kind of way over boosted. Or, again, if you want to go for that, that's fine. But when I'm looking back, I'm like, yeah, I didn't have the eye for it back then. Or I may have been more limited on my tools back then too. We're talking, 5-6 years ago, the tools just aren't as good as they are now. And the screens weren't as good either. So it was kind of a little bit harder to get that to judge it well.
Yeah, so just going from an LCD to an OLED screen makes a big difference, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, big time, especially with like the darks and the lights and getting that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that is honestly, a lot of it's trial and error and just having a general direction where you want to go. Because if I'm just starting to edit a photo randomly without a feeling of, okay, the look of this photo, I want to, like I said, for one here, I did a reflection. I want to really stress the reflection on the river. So I'm going to start to adjust it to really emphasize the reflection. There was another photo I took around the same time where it was a little bit more of a hazy look to it. And so when I started to edit it, I was like, okay, this isn't a reflection picture. Even though you can see a little bit of the sky, the blue of the sky in the river, you're not getting that really sharp reflection. So when I do this, I want to get a different feel for it. So instead of just randomly hitting things going up and down, I went on my way to say, okay, what do I want to do? At least have an idea where I was going. And as much as it pains to say it a lot of times, when you start taking a picture and you start adjusting and you're doing things and you're trying maybe a couple different apps because you're familiar with, oh, I know this app's good for this or this app's good for that. And after a while, you're like, yeah, it's not doing what I wanted to do. And just sometimes you just got to, kind of anchor and move on to the next one.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, and that hurts. And I understand for everyone, that hurts because you took a picture for a particular reason and you're like, oh, this would have looked so great. This is going to be great. I have this. And then you start working on it. You do this and you're like, it didn't turn out. But maybe if I put in a little more effort, and then you do a little more effort and you're like, it's still not. Maybe after a while, you just get frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it's like you start getting like, why won't you do this? What's wrong with you? I know what I want. I know where I'm going. I think I know how to. Nah, sometimes you just can't get there from here.
Yeah, it's like
So,
making a stew. You start putting ingredients in,
mhm,
and then eventually it just gets oversaturated with too many ingredients, and it kind of spoils it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like I said, sometimes you just can't do it. So I think a lot of improvement, at least for me over the years, was taking lots of photos, slowing down a little bit. I tend to do things a little bit quicker, more of a snap judgment. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, that's neat. Oh, I might take a picture. Boom. Okay, I'm done.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
literally, okay, take a half a second. No, no, don't take, I'm not one to, I know some people are, I'm not one to say, okay, I'm going to stay here for 10 minutes and make sure I can get this angle and this angle. And not quite me, but that's more of a personality and how I do stuff. But literally take a breath, look, try to slow yourself down a little bit and give yourself that little extra time that some things you may not be able to fix later on. Just take the time or take multiple photos. That's of course for me that's one of the greatest things about digital photography overall, and the iPhone in particular and phones in particular is, oh, you want to take like 5 different shots of this particular scene, and each one's maybe just a little bit different in terms of what you're capturing, what angle you get. No problem, do it.
Hmm.
There's no penalty for taking 30, 40 shots or how many you want to take. So go for it.
Yeah.
So, just taking that little extra time that helped me out in terms of my improvement, in terms of not just doing the snap, take picture, take picture, take picture. And just also when I'm editing, sometimes not only taking that extra time, but what I've been doing, and I've done this a couple times, is and you can do this on the phone by when you're actually in the Photos app. On the bottom, at least on my phone, on the bottom left, you have the box with the arrow coming out that gives you the option to send.
Oh yeah.
If you
Yeah. The
bring that
share
up,
sheet.
you can, yep, once you bring that up and you scroll, you can actually duplicate the image.
Right.
So make a duplicate or two, and then say, okay, this image, I'm going to do it in the stock photo app and do whatever edit. Now I know you can always, at least most apps will let you edit non-destructively, but this way you can say, okay, I have an app here. I'm going to try doing in that. Okay, see how that turns out. Now I'm going to try another app. Start with the exact same base image and try to edit in there somehow, because each app handles either the automatic or their individual sliders. They all work a little bit differently.
Yeah. It all depends on how they write the algorithms for it, right?
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
because Matt mentioned Polar last time, or
Hmm.
Polar, I started to say, well, I thought to myself, well, after Matt mentioned it, and I was like, well, yeah, I like the dehaze feature. That adds a nice little touch. And I like some of the selection that he pointed out, where it's like, oh, you can work on the sky separately from the person versus this versus that for the brightness. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So there were some shots I did that was like, okay, well, I want to edit one shot in just the straight app, the built-in one in Polar.
Hmm.
And I have a couple more like Art Card, Visionist, and I forget I have a couple which are more the artistic. They literally will make it look more like a painting or more abstract. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll try that. I'll say, okay, well, this image, I kind of like it. It doesn't really scream to me, go in this direction, which there are some images you look at and you're like, oh, like I said, I have the one image where the river's in front, but it's a very smooth image, and that just screams to me sharp and clear and reflection. But there are other images where it's kind of like, I like the layout, I like the framing I did with it, but I'm not sure, would that be good or would that be good or would that be, I'm not sure. But what I'll do is I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to try my stock photo app here. I'll try this app here. I'll try this app here. And even though it sounds weird doing multiple edits on one photo that are independent, that way you kind of get a feeling for, not only have a better feeling for your tools, Because it doesn't matter if you have the greatest tool in history. If it's overly complicated or you don't have a good grasp of it, I'm looking at you, Adobe. It's not going to turn out like there are people who are Adobe wizards.
Oh yeah.
And I've tried to use Photoshop and just for some edits or for some things like that. And it is I feel so overwhelmed and so over my head in it. Even the one for the iPad, it's kind of like, okay, I have a conceptual idea what's going on, but it's too much for me right now. So even though that may be the greatest tool in history, I don't have a grasp of how to use it well. So it doesn't do me any good. So I'll use a simpler tool or tool that's maybe not as powerful, but I can handle it better, so it works better for me. So again, it's like experiment. It's like, okay, I took this photo. I'll try it in this app. I'll try it in this app. I'll try it in this app. Oh, all of a sudden I notice that this app gives me this kind of image. I like it. Maybe not for this photo, but I'll keep it in the back of my head if I see something like, oh, if I see something in the future that I want to have this particular look, I know I have that app that I can use to use it then. So just getting familiar with your tools, kind of like a Spectre app for taking photo.
Yeah.
Do I use it a lot? Not necessarily, but if I run across, oh, there's a nice stream, I want to take a photo. Oh, I have this tool I can pull out. Again, you don't need this you don't need the Batman variety util belt with every little thing in it. But you just have like 4 or 5 tools that you're very comfortable with. And again, the only way you can get comfortable is experimenting and know what works for you. Everyone's brain works differently. So for me, improvement is taking lots of photos, experimenting, getting familiar with tools, and having a grasp for, and in my mind, the only way you can do this is actually to do the work is after, and it's hard to say, I don't like to use if you do 10,000 hours, and that's how many you need. But after a while, you'll get a feeling for, oh, this is the type of photo I like. It's pleasing to your eye as a photographer. Don't make, and I hate to say it this way, but I don't want to say ignore what other people like, because feedback's important and hearing what other people like or don't like is important, but it shouldn't judge. If I like this type of photo and the way it turns out, and if someone's criticism is, I don't like it, why? Constructive criticism's great, but you need I noticed that this is here and this is kind of distracting. Oh, that helps out. Thanks so much. Something like that. But, for improvement, a lot of it is experiment, try things out, know your tools. And of course, don't forget the scariest thing of all, putting yourself out there for other people to see what you worked on.
Yeah, definitely. But sometimes that pays off because you got noticed by Polar on Instagram.
Yeah. And generally the reason I always tag my photos based more on location, what I'm taking a photo of, and any tools I use. Yeah. So, and I do that partially in case anyone's interested in, let's say someone sees a picture and they're like, oh, that's really neat. And they can say, oh, they use this app to take the picture, or they edit it in this app. You know. So, and
I do the same thing.
Yeah. And the people at Polar just noticed the one photo I took, and I actually put it in an Instagram story. I didn't even put it in a normal post because it was one of these, I took one shot and did 5 different edits on it. Mm-hmm. And one of them was just the base one. One was, and the Polar one I actually put in the Instagram story. I did the @Polar, and they noticed it and they said, "Hey, this is a great shot." And I said, "Hey, well, thanks so much. I appreciate being noticed," which always true. It's always nice for someone to say, "Hey, that's a really nice shot." It just And I mentioned the podcast and mentioned Matt since he brought it up. And they said, well, because in Polar, you can actually save a style. So if there's an edit you always like to do, you can say, okay, save that as a favorite. That way, if you go back in, you can just say, use this particular style and it gets a particular look to it. Mm-hmm, and they said, well, if you or Matt work on that, let us know and we'll feature you. I'm like, wow, that's, that was
nice.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, putting yourself out there, it can be scary because, you can run the whole gamut of emotion from putting stuff out there and no one noticing it, which can happen, no reaction, or putting yourself out there and then sometimes it's a negative reaction. Either someone or don't know who just happens to crawl across it. And, or you get the surprising happy one. You're like, wow, that, but that is the kind of, for me, one of the big step in improvement is with photography, you got to get someone else to look at it.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if you don't get the feedback, and because no one's perfect, obviously, everyone has room to grow, no matter who you are, no matter how long you've been doing something, there's always room for improvement or growth. That if you don't hear from other people, you'll never grow.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what was it? The last show when we had Matt Hoffman on, I learned something just by, just through that discussion, something, what was it now? It had something to do with shooting with the native camera app. I think it was, I think it was using the volume down button to capture video. I didn't know you could do that. I
didn't either. Yeah.
It's something so simple, but yeah, it just completely escaped my mind. But yeah, no, I mean, all these things that you just talked about can all be encompassed in developing your style.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens when you start, honing your craft is what we've been kind of calling this. You seem to develop a style with it. And, I mean, it's a great thing. Having your own style is really a real cool thing to have, because, I can look at, different people's photos on Instagram, and before I look at who posted it, I can almost tell whose picture it is just by the style of their editing, and maybe sometimes the style of the shot too. So, that's good. I thought that was really cool that they commented on it and whatnot, and they're opening up the opportunity to be featured with the whatever preset or whatever it is that you make.
Yeah.
So that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, you and I've been doing this for basically since 2012, I guess. I think you're pretty close to that same time length, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I can honestly say that I've come into my own style only in the last couple of years. I've changed how I've done things over the course of those years, because the apps change, and like you said earlier, the phones are changing, and like the iPhone 12 now is not like the iPhone 7 used to be when it first came out. I mean, it was the phone to have then, whereas things have changed, things have evolved, and our styles will probably have changed and evolved over the years, and coming into our own is a good thing. And like you said, don't be afraid to shoot. Take all kinds of pictures and work away at it. So, and the photo that Dave was talking about, folks, is going to be the photo that's in the post for this episode on the website. This is episode 25. So it'll be on iPhonography.ca, and I forget what I've called the title of it, but something to do with contests and honing your craft, I think. But that's the picture that Polar saw on Instagram and commented on, and it's a really cool image. It's a picture of a golf course, and I can't get over how nice and green the grass is, and that that you got to go back there in the fall and get that shot with the leaves on the trees, and I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily it's actually within walking distance from my house.
Oh, really?
So yeah. That's actually, and this is again, one of the really nice things about, of course, the iPhone is that you don't need to carry a big heavy rig or, be really inconvenienced when you want to take a photo, because that was during one of my lunch runs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was just during my run. It's a place I normally run by. So
Cool.
just normal place down the road. And I just happened to look over and like, oh, I like the way that this is framed here from the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just the way the trees were there and the bunker was there. And it's like, I really like the way that's framed there. So I'm just going to, stop, take the phone out of my pocket, take the picture, took a couple just to get different angles, and then just headed off and finish with the rest of the run.
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically, you kind of pre-visualized it as you were running, and it was enough to make you stop. So that's cool. Yeah. Well, that's all right then. All right. So now we'll move on to a little bit of discussion on photo contests. And oddly enough, I got an email this morning for the iPhone Photography Awards, the annual competition, and I've entered that before, and I never won anything. But I'm not surprised because there are so many people that enter this thing, and so what I'm going to kind of go through here are some points that I found on the website of an acquaintance of mine from Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada here, Darlene Hildebrandt. She has a website called digitalphotomentor.com, and there's going to be a link to what we're talking about here in the show notes. And she wrote a post about entering photography contests and kind of what to look out for and what to avoid and things like that. So I'll just run through a few of these, and you can really get a lot more information from the webpage. But I'll start out with some of the things to look out for, like to watch out for. Maybe some things to kind of avoid. Okay, first thing is make sure the terms of the contest are outlined clearly. So when you're reading the the terms or the rules or whatever they call them, make sure that they're very clear and concise, and they're not leaving anything out. If you're kind of doubtful about anything, don't hesitate to contact them, or do a bit of research on what you think might be missing and all that stuff. Make sure, okay, here's another point, make sure you retain the copyright to your photos. That should be explicitly listed on, whether it's an FAQ, like a frequently asked questions, or in the rules themselves or wherever. But that it should say that somewhere in the dialogue about the contest, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to give up your the copyright to your photos. And don't ever sign it over. Like if they say, okay, to enter this contest, if you win, you have to sign over the copyright. No, forget it. If that's what they're wanting, don't enter the contest. If you're just starting out in photography, and this goes for mobile, traditional, film, anything, basically any photography contest, but there's a lot of them for mobile. So, that's why I'm bringing this up. But if you're just starting out, don't send a lot of money for entry fees. Like some of these contests can be a little expensive to enter. Look for free contest. Make sure you're not giving up. You're not going to give your images away. So usually when something's free, there's a bit of a cost to it. So it's like Facebook and Instagram. They're free to use, but it's costing you all your information. So the same would apply for a photo contest. It's a free entry. just kind of be very careful about, the fact that they could take the rights of your photo or something. Going back to that other point, just be very careful about entering a free contest. But you don't want to, if you're just starting out, you don't want to spend a fortune submitting photos to a contest. And there could be pros in it. That's my next point, is checking to see if there are any categories for pros versus amateurs. You don't want to enter a contest where you're going to be put up against professionals. I mean, you certainly wouldn't have a chance in heck then. So, all these things kind of watch out for. Just look after yourself when you're entering a photo contest. I am entering a couple. I'll get to that later, but I'm entering a couple, and I read through the terms and all that stuff before I submitted any images. So, just be careful about how you enter these things. So some of the good things about photo contests are, look for ones that have good prizes, to win, right? Whether it's money or so, like the iPhone Photography Awards, the first prize is an iPad. I don't have one. Could I use one? Maybe. If I win it, that'd be awesome. If I don't, oh well, I guess I won't be heartbroken. But make sure the ones with the good prizes are the ones to enter. You don't want to enter a contest where they're just going to say, okay, yay, you won, and that's it. You want to make it worth your while. When you're looking at a contest, look for past winners. Make sure the prizes were actually handed out to people, and it will give you a good idea of the caliber of images you could be up against. So when I look at the iPhone Photography Awards, I look at last year's winners and honorable mentions and all that stuff, and I think, okay, could I even remotely have a chance? Well, you never know. I look at some of the images, and some of them are, kind of so-so in my opinion, and some of them are absolutely amazing. So it just, and that's all subjective too, right? It's all personal taste, but and see what they've selected in the past as winning photos, and if you have something that may fit into those, then maybe that's what they're looking for again for the contest that you're looking at. Look for feedback. See if the contest that you're entering has comments from judges or other contestants. Anywhere in, sometimes when you enter a photo in a contest, it goes into an album or something where people can look through the entrance, and maybe there's some comments on what people are putting in there, and if they're getting some really good positive feedback, that might help you decide, what picture you might want to put in. Excuse me. And before you enter, something that you could do is ask other people, ask friends, family, whoever, for opinions on the ones that you're considering to put in. Like if I'm going to enter a photo in a contest, and I have, say, 5 of them to pick from, but I'm only going to put one in, I'm going to ask my wife for her opinion because I value it, and I'm going to, maybe ask a few friends and show them, okay, I'm going to thinking about putting these in the contest. Which one would you go? Which one do you like best? Because sometimes that really helps you make a decision, especially if you're stuck on 2 or 3 that you just can't decide on. And sometimes somebody else's opinion will really make a big difference. So those are just things to think about when you're entering a photo contest. The best advice I think I would give is just to read the rules very, very closely, because the last thing you want to do is give away your stuff or enter a contest that's a little shady or whatever, right? So just don't expect to win. If you do, it's awesome. If you don't, that's fine. Yeah, it's not the end of the world. I guess the last thing I could think of is to follow the submission guidelines. So, just to make sure you submit properly so you don't get it disqualified. Like if you don't, if it has to be within a certain spec for resolution, like a certain number of pixels high and wide or whatever, make sure it's in that range. You don't want it to be thrown out because it's, way too big or whatever. So, just something to think about when you're entering a contest. And with this iPhone Photography Awards thing coming up, the entry deadline, I believe, is the end of March. So, bunch of ideas for food for thought here. And go to the website. There'll be a link in the show notes. And Dave, do you got anything that you can think of off the top of your head when it comes to a contest?
I would say definitely springboarding off what you said about, and you hate to say be suspicious. I mean, the iPhone Photography Awards have been around. Anything that's, you can find proof that someone's been around that long, and they just don't say, we've been around for 10 years, but there's no past history, or just do a general search on it and put in what you're looking at, look at the award and say, and then just put space and then put either controversy or issues or questions.
And that's exactly what I did tonight before the show. I was doing a little research. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just reviews if you wanted to be a little more. You just got to be careful with a lot of places. Reviews, they'll have, you want to get away from the actual site itself. You want a good third party. And of course, you have to be careful because what people love to do online is just complain a lot of times. So, it's one of those things of, again, use your common sense and say, well, if all the feedback basically says, well, these people are stupid, they don't know what good photography is, and you can look at the winners gallery and say, you know what, those are pretty good photos. I don't think this is a good, they're probably legit. And like I said, the iPhone Photography Awards, when I look, I have it up here too. And it's like, first prize is an iPad Air, and I'm thinking, okay, it's maybe an older one, but that's fine. No, it's still a few $100s. And for the grand prize, and for the overall winners, the top 3 overall winners get an iPad Watch 3, which it isn't too bad. And it says the first place winner in each of for a version 3. So it's the older one, but still it's fine, But then the first place winner in the categories gets a gold bar. It's kind of a small one, 1 gram, but still it's a gold bar, which I would like to have a 1 gram gold bar. You get a 1 gram gold bar. It's like, okay, that'd be really neat to have, even if you're not going to sell the 1 gram gold bar, or I don't know how much it would be valued for, but
that would fit in with all your medals.
Yeah, that'd be kind of nice to have. And like you said, obviously now you can't run. Well, you could run, but like I said, getting familiar with it, seeing the cost, just get a feel for, does this feel legit or not? And it's the same thing where someone says, oh, and like you said, and it is really nice on their website. They say you keep the copyright as the photographer. They specifically spell that out. You really want to be careful, because you get the whole thing of, and we've seen this a few times, like we've heard Matt say this actually, where someone said, hey, we'd like to use your photo in our travel guide. And it's like, okay, how much you going to pay me? Oh, no. We normally don't pay people. It was for, I think, a state agency, but we'll credit you, and we'll give you credit. And we'll put your name on it. And, if, as much as it would feel nice to say, hey, my photo's used in this official thing that you can pick up anywhere, you're still giving something away that you put effort and time in at no cost.
Yeah, that's right.
Same thing with the, that's why a lot of times it's good for reviews and look at what they're saying, because it's like, okay, well, there may be contests, and I'm not overly familiar with all the legalities of all of them. They could say, well, if we pick you as a winner, we will have exclusive rights for this image for 6 months, after the win date. Yeah. And then after that, it reverts to you. So it's up to you. Do you think that's worth it or not?
Yeah. And usually those rights are basically, they can use the image to promote the contest or, different things like that. But,
Right.
So you kind of have to ask yourself, are you okay with something like that? But, just read everything very, very carefully, and, don't walk in blind, right? You just want to make sure that everything's clear before you enter, and don't be afraid to enter. Don't let all this, don't let all this steer you away from entering a contest. Whether it's a local or a national or international or whatever kind of contest it is, but just make sure everything's very clear on what you're getting into. That's all.
Yeah.
So,
honestly, back and maybe someday in the future when we actually have in-person things, it would not, look out for local photography contest. Not necessarily an online one, but one where, you would have a photo printed out, which, iPhones can actually do pretty good for even up 8x10s, definitely that size. Or if you want to,
I have some 11x14s printed, and they're fantastic.
Yeah. So, if it's a matter of a physical printout, again, like you said, you may not want to invest a lot of money into it, but if you're investing a little bit, enough that you're comfortable in, get yourself out there, do it and see what kind of feedback you get. Yeah,
that's right. And, by all means, go to this website, digitalphotomentor.com, and there's the link will be in the show notes on the website on iphotography.ca, where you can read more in depth on what Darlene says about the, what to look out for and what to look for when you think you might want to enter a photo contest. So she's a real smart gal. She's got a lot of good information, and there's a lot of good stuff on her website in general with relation. There's even I think there's even some mobile stuff on there. So you give it a look on, and she has absolutely no idea I'm even talking about her about this right now. But she's a real good influence on photographers, so give it a look and check it out. So well, I think that just about wraps it up. Yeah, that was a quick one. It seemed like a quick one, and it's been about 40 minutes, so that's about right.
Yeah.
So I guess we shall just tell everybody where they can find you, Dave.
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as ProfPod. A bit of a heads up that Instagram definitely for the photos. Twitter, I use the IFF or IFTT to copy everything over between Instagram and Twitter, since they don't play nice to each other, but Twitter tends to be a little more yelly. So if you're someone who's like, yeah, I want to stay away completely from politics, or for whatever reason, professional wrestling, maybe you don't like, it's going to be in my Twitter. So you can just, if you're just interested mostly into photography, just go over to Instagram and, keep your blood pressure in good shape there.
Yeah. All righty. You can find me at on Instagram at Macmillan Photo, on Twitter, Macmillan_photo, and all the links to my online stuff at a website called about.me/Macmillan. And we do the show about every 2 weeks, and as long as life doesn't get in the way. And as I mentioned earlier, you could find the podcast at iphonography.ca on the Apple Podcast app, iHeartRadio, and probably many other places where you can catch a podcast. Just look for iPhonography and you'll probably find it. You can find the Artful iPhonography community on that's where this podcast originated from. So it's a good community. We're up to 72 people, Dave, on there.
Oh wow!
And it's at artfulipc.club, and it's on the MeWe platform. So it's on iPhone, Android. There's the web version, and but if you go to artfulipc.club, that's where you'll find it. There's links on the webpage for that, on the website for that too. Just look for the big orange Artful Eye or Artful Eye, I guess it is, logo, and that'll take you to it. So, all right, Dave. Well, I guess we'll call it a night, and we'll see you guys all on the next one.
Yeah, have a great one, guys.
Alrighty, take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And I am going to put Matt's bye-bye on the end of all that.
Okay.
Because I snipped it off the last one, and I set it aside in GarageBand, so now I can just put it in everywhere.